Hello and welcome to Line Sniper Fight Night. I'm your host, Dave Milhouse. I got my man, Manpreet Jass here, MMA Lock of the Night with me. We're going to break down UFC Vegas 22 live from Las Vegas, Nevada on Saturday night. It's a free card on ESPN. Plenty of watchable fights on here. Nothing super hype, but lots of decent fights. Isn't that right? How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I'm loving this monthly appearance that I'm making over here on Line Sniper with you as well. We always have some great chemistry and are able to chop it up and give some solid takes on both sides. So hopefully we have some disagreements on some spots here. But yeah, very much looking forward to this fight. We get to see whether Kevin Holland is truly up there and a top-notch guy in his first ever main event, whereas Brunson is still going out there and turning away hot prospects just like he did last time around against Edmund Shabazian. So I can't wait to see how this one turns out, and I'm glad to chop it up with you once again for this week.
Yeah, man, feel the same way. Well, Kevin Holland here opens a plus 105 and stretched all the way out to minus 170-ish now. I kind of lean towards the opening line being much closer than the current, but I'm still not that comfortable betting Brunson here. I might, if we can just get a little bit more value, I'll feel comfortable with it. But this is a guy, Brunson is able to now put together a game plan. We were talking in the pre-show. He switched camps. He's now a little bit less of a wild man, more in control, and he can piece together a game plan now. And one thing he likes to do is go for these takedowns. We're in the small octagon here. Kevin Holland can't stop a nosebleed for a takedown. And so I feel like this fight could be much closer than it appears to be. Holland's a pretty flashy striker, a couple cool knockouts on the record. But I'm leaning towards him being a little bit more hype because once you enter this top 10 in any weight division, you got to be more well-rounded than we've seen Kevin Holland be. He's the winner of 5 straight fights, all in 2020. How about that? What a year. But, now that he's entering up here in the top 10, I think Brunson gives him a real run for his money here for sure. So I'm leaning value on Brunson. I'm not so sure if I want to bet it yet, but I still think we might get a better line closer to fight time. How do you feel about this fight, Manpreet?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. I think that Holland is riding a lot of hype right now, especially the way that he disposed of Jacare Souza last time he fought him at UFC 256. Aesthetically, it just looks absolutely like a one-sided beatdown. He looks like he has a tremendous amount of power in his hands just off of that one fight. But I think his KO power is being slightly overestimated here, or at least over-exaggerated. And I think that the narrative on Brunson's chin is being kind of over-exaggerated too. It's been it's been a little bit now since we've seen him actually get knocked out. But what we have seen from him is a change in discipline. Training down there at Sanford MMA, and even after knocking out Edmund Shabazian last time around, the first couple words that he says, he goes 3-0, Sanford MMA, and he lets everybody know that that camp is truly having an effect on how he is performing. Kevin Holland, on the other hand, like you said, super busy as of late. He's had 5 fights since May of 2020. That's very, very that's quite impressive considering that you're talking about fighting on the UFC scene. But let's not forget, 6 fights ago, he just got tapped out by Brendan Allen, and that was October of 2019. And Brendan Allen, probably not the greatest performance that he's going through right now, or at least a status of his career. And Kevin Holland, the one thing that truly sticks out to me is his fight against Darren Stewart 3 fights ago, where he's ending that fight on his back, getting completely bombed on by Darren Stewart, who is a striker, not a grappler, a striker. So the fact that he was able to get him down with relative ease in that 3rd round and have the success that he did leads me to believe that Derek Brunson could definitely have the same type of success here if he gets out of those first 2 rounds. If his chin truly is durable, like I believe it is, he should be able to survive those first 2 and then start to take over later in this fight with takedowns, with his strength, with his top pressure. And even though Kevin Holland is a black belt here, I just don't see it in the cage, right? He's giving up positions that he shouldn't be giving up. I think it might be because he is probably Travis Luter's star pupil at this point in time. So he wants to put that black belt on him and be like, this is my guy. He's killing it and all that. But I think that Brunson still has a lot to give. Even though he's 37 years old, I think we're truly seeing him come into his complete form. And I think we're going to see it this weekend. And I think we could either get a late finish for Derek Brunson or even a decision victory here. But I do lean Brunson. I do think he wins this fight by winning minutes. grappling, clinching, whatever it is, and just taking the safe approach here. So yeah, I like Brunson as the dog, and I wouldn't even mind a shot at that plus 150 range. And like you said, the opening odds were a little bit more accurate with this line being closer to a pick'em with Brunson as a slight favorite. So yeah, I lean Brunson. I think he wins, and I think we get an upset this weekend in the main event.
Yeah, and I think this one might drag out a little while too. You got that over 2.5 sitting there with basically a pick'em juice, no matter where you're looking. I think that's a little light. I think we might see the championship rounds. There's no championship. I still call it championship rounds. Let's get on to the co-main event. Gregor Gillespie, Brad Riddell. This is a clash of styles. Both guys have a pretty clear path to victory, I would say. If it stays on the feet, it's Brad Riddell's world. If it gets to the ground, it's Gregor Gillespie time. Gregor Gillespie averages 7 takedowns per 15 minutes in his UFC career. That is ridiculous, especially when you take into consideration this guy gets some control time too. So it's like he's almost always taking you down if you're up. And, he comes out last fight. Kevin Lee lands maybe combo of the year on him. 2019, that was a long time ago, but man, boom. What a right hook, head kick combo. That was about as stiff as a dude I've ever seen on his way down. He took the time. He doesn't seem to be too bothered by that. And over on the other side, we got Brad Riddell here, City Kickboxing, and it's exactly that. None of these guys seem to have a ground game. They're all good strikers. But in this small cage, less room to move around, and a wrestler like Gillespie across from you, you're in trouble. So what I am looking at here is some pretty interesting stats if you're into that. Some takedown defense issues for Brad Riddell. He's giving up 40% of the takedowns he faces. And if I'm being honest, I don't think any of the guys he's wrestled with are even close to Gregor Gillespie level here. Alex Da Silva, 3 takedowns. Jamie Malarkey, 3 takedowns. And Mustafayev scores 8 takedowns on him. See, Mustafayev's a pretty reasonably good wrestler, in my opinion. But that's what a reasonably good wrestler is doing to Brad Riddell. Now, Riddell wins all 3 of these fights. I think the last 2 of them, arguably, you could say he lost. One was a split decision win. I thought he lost that fight to Mustafayev. And then he wins a unanimous against Da Silva. But that fight was really competitive and close. He only outlanded Da Silva by a few strikes. And Da Silva got himself 3 takedowns, some control time, a submission attempt. Could have went either way. So now he's climbing up in levels of competition here to Gregor Gillespie when maybe he shouldn't be climbing up the ladder as fast as he is. Maybe he's not ready. He's not better than Mustafayev, I don't think. And barely better than Alex Da Silva. Now you're going to have to go grapple with Gregor Gillespie coming off a long layoff and that level of wrestling. So, yeah, I think he's in big trouble. I think Gillespie will get this to the ground early, often, as much as he wants, really. It's going to have a dominating performance. And the line's sitting at about a minus 250. I still think there's value. I made this line minus 300. Got it at minus 230 myself. I'm pretty happy with that. And I think it'll keep getting bet out. This has been getting bet out since the open. Hasn't stopped, hasn't come back. There's been, there's no other dudes with anything to say about that yet. I guess they'll let it get stretched before they do. You seeing this the exact same way I am, Manpreet?
Yeah, he's, dare I say, my lock of the night play here. I got him at that minus 230 range. I just think that the knockout or the percentage that I'm giving the knockout for Riddell here is very low in comparison to what I see Gregor Gillespie winning this fight. Now, a lot of people want to go back and look at those 3 fights that Riddell won and say, okay, he gave up all these takedowns, but he's still going out and winning these fights. But the difference between those fighters and a guy like Gregor Gillespie is those guys gas. Those guys start to slow down the later the fight goes. More often than not, their strongest rounds were the first round or even the first halfway through the second round. That's where we see them start to suck wind. And then Riddell does a good job of kind of, stifling the takedowns and nullifying the control time. Gregor Gillespie could go out there and, chain wrestle for 20 rounds if he wanted. The guy is just amazing in terms of his cardio, his ability to just, be very efficient with his gas tank. He never really slows down. The only time we've seen him go 3 rounds in the UFC was his UFC debut against Glyco Franca, and he still was, getting takedowns in the last minute of this fight. The guy's still able to go out there and just do it time and time again. His chain wrestling is bar none, probably the best in the division. Now with Khabib out of the picture. I love what we have with Gregor here. I think it's going to be a while until we see him in this minus 250 range again. If you guys remember, like all of his last fights, he's like minus 400, minus 450, minus 650 against a couple guys, because the guy is that good. His wrestling is that good, and his cardio holds up. And not only is his wrestling and his cardio good, his jiu-jitsu is up there as well. And that's something that a lot of wrestlers normally lack. They're able to get the fight to the ground, but they're not able to get their game going because they just don't flow well from on top. They don't pass guard as well as Gregor Gillespie, nor do they attack chokes and submissions as well as Gregor either. So I think Riddell is going to be in some trouble here. He really struggles with keeping guys at distance. I think that's what he needs to do here against Gregor. But, if all of his opponents in the past, like you said, 3 takedowns, 8 takedowns, if these guys are landing these many takedowns, I think that Gregor will do the same thing here. Now, I think a lot of people are just going to read too far into the knockout narrative of Gregor from his last fight. I like the fact that he took close to 2 years off. He's been off for a while now, or at least a year and a half, I should say. But that's the only time he's lost in the UFC. His only time he's lost in his professional MMA career, and the only time he ever got knocked out. He's been hurt by Glyco Franco early in his UFC career, hurt by Jason Gonzalez as well, but he always has the wherewithal in terms of changing that or that awareness to shoot for a takedown, or at least close the distance to kind of just prolong his ability to get back to get his senses back. And his striking isn't the worst, right? He was busting up Kevin Lee's face with that jab until he got knocked out there. Unfortunately, I don't want to go out there and see him strike with Brad Riddell here. I want him to go out there, get a takedown within the first minute of this fight, and let's secure that W as soon as possible. So the spot that I like is Gregor Gillespie via submission. Plus 250, I think, is a very solid spot. I think that once we see this fight hit the ground, we'll see the level of difference here and why Gregor Gillespie is a minus 250. I think it'll close closer to that minus 300 range, maybe minus 320 come fight time, because people are, they know what Gregor brings to the table. And Brad Riddell, he has that city kickboxing tax on him, right? He has that tax where it's just like whether you're a Russian or you're somebody affiliated with a very high level gym, people are always going to give you a little extra bonus points. And that's why I think we don't have this line at minus 400. Like if Brad Riddell was fighting out of buttfuck nowhere, Australia, I think he'd be, a plus 300 dog at this point in spot or at this point in time. But yeah, I like Gregor here. I think he cruises. We have to give credence to the possibility of a knockout here. But what we've been seeing from Brad Riddell as of late doesn't lead me to believe that he's going to go out there and knock out Gregor Gillespie. So I think we see Gregor close the distance, get this fight to the ground. Whether Riddell gets back to his feet, he's going to get put back down. I think the cardio won't fail Gregor, and he'll go out there and get a submission victory probably within the first 2 rounds.
Love it. Yeah, same page. Lots of value left on Gregor Gillespie. Let's get down here. Heavyweights. Late edition. The odds just popped up. It's Tai Tuivasa opening around minus 330 against Harry Hunsucker. And, well, after saying to myself, who the hell is Harry Hunsucker, and watching some film this morning, I found out that this guy sucks. He looks like he should be fighting at the local bar, not in the UFC. I don't understand. I guess he's the only heavyweight that was just willing to take the fight. I don't know. That Tai was willing to fight. I have no idea how this guy even gets a shot here. First of all, he's a little bit undersized. He only weighs in at like 240. So he's not a big heavyweight by any means, but he's also not athletic. He just looks like your average fat guy. His punches are pretty damn loopy. I haven't seen him throw one straight punch, not even a jab. He just runs forward, gets the hooks going. It's almost hard to believe that's his style, and he made it all this way. So, yeah, I think Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa probably loads up one fastball down the pipe and puts this guy away early. I'm not sure how much value to put on the line, though. Tai gasses out. Tai has a pretty damn incomplete game. This guy can't stop a takedown either. He's very vulnerable on the ground. I've never seen Harry shoot for one, so I think that Tai's going to knock him out. But, I mean, if you're an MMA fighter that wants to win, you find out what your opponent sucks at, and you attack it. So can you get a takedown, Harry? Maybe. And so I'm not so sure I want to bet this money line, but I will be looking for like round 1 props, knockout props, and I'm going to hope I get there before the sharps bet it out of proportion. I like Tai Tuivasa here. Do you like Harry Hunsucker, or are you on Team Tuivasa with us?
I'm on team violence for this fight. We got the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 265, and I've been telling a couple people since I saw that line, that is probably the most value you'll ever get at such a chalky price, because I don't see this fight going, even reaching the 3rd round. Like Harry Hunsucker, longest fight that he's had, 3 minutes and 54 seconds. That's the longest fight he's had. In 11 fights, he's never gone past that mark. And I think that's going to be some trouble for him here. I think that his cardio definitely does fall off, just like we saw in the Jared Vanderaa fight. That was his fight on the Contender Series, which he actually took on short notice. But this is another similar situation, taking the fight on short notice. And what we saw at the beginning of that Vanderaa fight was him going out there and just unloading his bombs. And can he catch Tuivasa with one of them? Yeah, it is a possibility, which is why I'm not laying the chalk on Tai Tuivasa. If you want to lay any chalk here, it's the fight doesn't go to decision. Or I'm expecting the under 1.5 to be, probably around that minus 200 range. And I think that still has some solid value, as I don't see this fight, going past the 7.5 minute mark. So yeah, both guys are going to throw big shots. If anybody's going to be a little bit more disciplined, I think it is going to be Tai Tuivasa, but that's almost an oxymoron in itself by saying that Tuivasa is a disciplined fighter. But yeah, I was looking to fade Tuivasa against his original opponent with Dontel Mays, and I was kind of bummed with Mays pulling out there. But in steps Hunsucker, probably the only guy that was close enough to take the fight. And I think, this is prime for, if people are going to go out there and parlay Tuivasa just because he's the UFC guy, this is prime for a spot where you're probably going to get your parlays busted, because Hunsucker, as shitty as he is, the guy still has a ton of power in his hands, and you can never discredit that when you're talking about the heavyweights. So, yeah, I'm sticking with the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm waiting for it to open up on some of my bookies, and if I'm able to get a solid line on it, I'm definitely going to hammer away on it, because yeah, I don't see this going 15 minutes whatsoever. If this fight goes 15 minutes, I might just have to stop handicapping altogether. There's no way you can predict anything more than this. But yeah, I like, I'll go with Tuivasa, but no way am I parlaying him. Give me the fight doesn't go to decision, and I'll be happy.
All right. Here's a sleeper for what I think might be fight of the night. It's one that I'm very interested in. We've got Adrian Yanez sitting around that minus 220-ish kind of line against Gustavo Lopez. I prioritized this early. I thought I really would like Yanez, so I got him early on my film study. It's so hard to say. He's a pretty good striker, but so is Lopez. And when we look at their UFC, their UFC schedule they faced, it's kind of different. Both of them have 2 fights, and both of their first fights are kind of like, Yanez comes in on the Contender Series and fights someone who's not UFC level competition. Lopez gets a short notice call up to fight Merab Dvalishvili, and that's an auto loss. He's lucky he didn't get finished. It's almost impressive that he didn't get finished. So we can't take much from either of those fights. And then they get their second fight in the UFC, and they both get a first-round finish. And obviously, you look good when you get a first-round finish. So it's just that there's so much left to be known. And I'm excited to watch these guys go, because now we get to see them, some iron on iron here. We get to see what these guys are made of. And I think we'll get a pretty good picture of who these guys are pretty soon. But yeah, just not enough footage on them against UFC level competition. The stat lines are way blown out of proportion due to level of competition. I don't know what to make of this, but I kind of imagine there's a little bit of value on Lopez here. And going into it, like I said, I thought Yanez would have been one of my favorite bets. But yeah, no, I lean value on Lopez, but not very confidently. How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, I really like me some Yanez, but would I bet him at this line? Probably not. I think that Lopez has some bark as a dog here, especially with the power that he has in his hands. But that's where my issue lays with him. He does have a little bit of a wrestling background, so if he wants to mix that into this fight, I think that would be a good approach for him. But in terms of his power in his hands and the technical aspect of his striking, he's a little bit too wide and looping for me, and that's where I think that Yanez will be able to capitalize. It's just his shorter, crisper shots down the middle are going to be able to kind of play like a Matador and Bull type of situation with Yanez probably backing up. And then whenever Gustavo Lopez crashes forward, he's just going to be eating shots down the middle. And I think that's where this fight truly is dictated. Will Gustavo be successful on some takedowns? Probably. But we did see Yanez very successful in terms of stuffing some takedowns against much higher wrestlers like Miles Johnson, Domingo Pilarte on the regional scene. Both guys formerly have been in the UFC. I think Johns is still in the UFC. I think Pilarte got cut, but both guys were very strong wrestlers, and I think much better wrestlers than Mr. Gustavo Lopez. But both of those fights were split decision losses because even when Yanez was getting taken down, he's getting right back to his feet and he's landing some solid shots and doing some good damage. So I think that I don't think we'll see Lopez as successful with the takedowns in this fight as his prior opponents that beat Yanez. But I think that Yanez has a very bright future, technically sound on the feet, probably one of the best striking games that we've seen from a young up-and-comer in the UFC. And yeah, I like Yanez. I think even Yanez inside the distance is a solid spot because I think he can go out there and knock out Gustavo Lopez. I think the Yanez line, Yanez by KO is plus 115, and then Yanez inside the distance is plus 100. So he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. So the submission line is plus 1400. The reason being is he's never succeeded in winning a fight via submission in pro MMA. But one fight that I want to bring up to people to remind them of where we got a crazy submission line recently was Miguel Baeza against Takashi Sato, another black belt who never got a professional MMA submission victory, but his line was at plus 900. I think a submission could be live here against Gustavo Lopez, but I'd rather go with the knockout here. And I think that the crisper hands are going to be his saving grace. We could potentially also get a club and sub situation where he drops him and then follows up with a submission of some sort. But I think Yanez inside the distance is probably the safest spot if you're picking Yanez at all. So yeah, I like Yanez. I think he has a very bright future. Minus 225, a little bit too wide in my eyes right now. But I do think that he wins this fight, and I think he does it inside the distance.
All right. Max Griffin, Song Kenan. We got Max Griffin sitting at about minus 205 right now. Should be a good fight. On the feet, I think they're pretty close to equal. I think Song carries a little bit more power, but Griffin's a little bit more accurate and crisp. It feels like maybe not crisp, but if the volume's there, it's there. And the one thing that really stands out to me here is Song Kenan can't stop a takedown. His takedown defense is 45%, so he's given up more than half. And Max Griffin's a guy that lands at a 53% clip. He averages 1.7 per 15 minutes, so he gets almost 2 every fight. I don't think he's going to have trouble getting this one down. It's how well can he keep it down? I think well enough to get the victory, so I don't mind the line move out from minus 150 to this 205 range. And now I think, it's just not bettable in my eyes. I was wondering, do you find an edge anywhere in this fight?
I think the value on both sides are kind of out the window, right? I think that if Song wins this fight, he probably wins by knockout. I don't really see him going out there and putting on a pace on Max Griffin. I don't think we see him go out there and complete takedowns on Max Griffin. So if you are looking to back Kenan, I think the best approach would be to take him by knockout or inside the distance, so you're not really leaving any money on the table. With the Max Griffin, on the other hand, I think he has multiple ways of winning this fight. Takedowns, like you said, he's secured numerous amounts of takedowns against his past couple of opponents. I think even in this Lehman Madaya fight, he completed 6 takedowns, which is absolutely crazy. But I think he has a decent pace. I think his volume is out there as well. And I think the blueprint of beating Song Kenan, especially if you're a fighter like Max Griffin, is already out there. If you just go back and watch the fight with Alex Morono and Kenan Song, you see Alex Morono, who's a jiu-jitsu guy, going out there and just putting volume on Kenan, constantly moving, staying on the outside, throwing a leg kick, throwing a jab, whatever it is, just not staying still, not letting Kenan Song get his big power off. And I think that's where Max Griffin will have some value here. I think he can go out there and stay on his bicycle, stay on the outside, get some shots off there, and then whenever the timing is right, just go out there, get the takedown, and get some control time as well. So I do like Max Griffin here. He was one of my stronger leans on the card when I was looking for like my big play of the night. But Gregor Gillespie I felt a lot more comfortable with, but I still do think that Max Griffin has a very solid shot to go out there and beat Song Kenan via decision in this spot.
Yeah, that feels about right to me. Song has pretty bad cardio as well. He's going to be huffing and puffing at some point. So I'm kind of hoping he starts hot. We get a good live line on Griffin, and the rest is history. Speaking of history, we got Marion Renault, Macy Chiasson. Marion Renault's about to turn 44 years old in like 2 months, 3 months. Holy smokas. Yeah, she's getting up there in age. She's fought great competition for so long now. And then on the other side here, we got Macy Chiasson, who is kind of like this up-and-coming development project that just, in my eyes, hasn't been looking like she's improving that much. The strength of schedule is not there for Macy Chiasson. The only decent fighter, in my opinion, decent fighter that she's been tested against is Landsberg, and Landsberg beat her. On the other side, Marion Renault here, she's fought, everybody that's ranked, some of them twice. And she's been around the block. So when we look at these striking numbers here, and we see Macy Chiasson obviously has the nicer numbers, well, we got to take that with a major grain of salt because she's beating up people that can't strike or do anything, and she's a giant. She's 5'11", 72-inch reach. Marion Renault's only 5'6" with a 68-inch reach, and like I said, she's 44 years old. It's just like, what do we do with this? So I think there's some value on Marion Renault here, but at the same time, I do expect Macy Chiasson to eventually put it together, you know? And I don't want to be on the wrong side of change here because Marion's going to have to fall off a cliff. Macy's going to get better. Is it Saturday night? It very well could be. So the one thing Marion Renault really has going for her is a 71% takedown accuracy. She just doesn't shoot enough, you know? She only averages landing half of one every single fight. I'd like to see her shoot a lot more, and if I knew she would, I'd be betting on her. How do you feel about this one? Is Macy going to get it together?
I think you are on the nail here, or hitting the nail on the head. In terms of saying that Renault has value. I think that she's the value side here, you know, great level of experience, or at least level of competition that she's been going up against. Like her second ever MMA fight, I believe, was against Yulia, who also fights earlier on this card. She's also fought, you know, Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington, Yana Kunitskaya. Like, level of competition is definitely there for her. And not to mention, even though she's turning 44 in a couple months, she only started professional MMA at 33 years old. So she got a late start in the game. She doesn't really have all this crazy fight miles on her. So she's still able to go out there and have decent performances. Chiasson, on the other hand, I feel like she's still green, right? She's only 6 or 7 fights into her professional MMA career, and most of the fights she's winning, she's just winning because she's like the bigger and stronger fighter, just like bullying these women pretty much. Like, technically speaking, I think that Renault is probably the crisper striker. I think she's better in at least in the Muay Thai clinch aspect, and she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which I think is much better than what Macy Chiasson has on the ground here. My thing, the way that I'm approaching this is I might take a little bit of a sprinkle on the round 3's prop for Marion Renault. If you watch the last fight with Macy Chiasson against Shanna Young, she's fighting a woman that's coming in on short notice and is from a weight class below, and she was just muscling that entire fight, like just pushing her up against the cage, getting a couple takedowns, and then even whenever her opponent is like digging an underhook and changes the position, Chiasson just drives forward. She like spears her opponents through the cage because she just wants to stick to them as close as possible and just, you know, really overpower them and use her muscles and use her strength to kind of just bully her way to a decision victory in most of her fights, especially if she's not able to get the finish. Renault, I think if we get the same type of game plan that Chiasson tried against Shanna Young, Renault will be able to take advantage of some of those slip-ups that she did, right? Like, there's a couple of instances where she just slides off the back of Shanna Young because she's just trying to muscle everything and she's just, you know, overextending a little bit too much. And I feel like Renault, with the black belt in jiu-jitsu in her back pocket, I think she'll be able to cause Chiasson some trouble here. I think people are heavily overlooking Renault due to her age, but I think that she still has shown that she can go out there and have solid performances. 4 of her 9 wins have come in rounds 2 and round 3. So she does get stronger as the fight starts to go on. And we even see it in the Yana Kunitskaya fight where she drops the first 2 rounds, but that third round absolutely bloodies the face of Yana by continuously striking, moving forward, and making it a very rough night for her. So I think that Renault is much more live than people are making her out to be. I think she's very live to get that submission in the third round, which is kind of the angle that I'm going to be chasing here. And the Chiasson, again, super green, and level of competition is not nearly what Renault has had to go up against. You know, when Sarah Moras is having success against you, you know you're in a little bit of trouble. Luckily for her, she was able to get out of that armbar attempt late in that first round and then finish her in the second round. But, you know, she's getting taken down. She's getting, you know, even Panikian Zad had some close submission attempts on her. I think that Renault could definitely make it a lot trickier for Chiasson to win this fight. I'm expecting her to be down going into that third round. So even if you want to approach this from the live betting perspective, you might get a great line on Renault to potentially get a finish late in this fight. But I'll probably have a pre-fight bet on that round 3 prop around that plus 1,400, plus 1,700 range, because I think there's an immense amount of value there, given that Renault does get stronger the later the fights go, and what Chiasson, again, too green, muscles everything, and you know, if you muscle everything, you're going to get tired faster. And luckily for her, she's been putting girls away, which is why she, you know, when she does go to a decision, she's 1-1, I believe, right? She lost to Lena Landsberg, where she started to gas in that second round, trying to clinch fuck Lena Landsberg. But that's what Lena Landsberg does. She's very live and very effective in the clinch positions. And Macy Chiasson found that out the hard way. And then Shanna Young, she beats her because she's the bigger woman, taking the fight on short notice and all that. So I like Renault here. I'll go with the round 3 side here. But yeah, I think if people are, again, parlaying Chiasson here, like they're parlaying Tai Tuivasa, they might be very, very upset if Renault gets her hand raised. And I think it's a liver possibility than the odds are indicating.
Yeah, that third round does sound interesting. Macy tends to gas late in her fights, and Renault is not going to gas. And again, if we're looking at this from a statistical point of view and the strength of schedule, I mean, you got to take it with a major grain of salt. They're probably a lot closer in the striking numbers in reality than, it would say on paper. So yeah, Macy's in a bit of trouble here. I think Marion is very live at 44 years old, and she might really derail this girl's career because she's not living up to the hype, even though she's getting the wins. And speaking of old people fighting young people, we got Leonardo Santos taking on Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson is one of my favorite guys to watch. I love the calf kick. I love wrestling. It's my favorite kind of guys to bet on. And that's like, he works those things. But he's very hittable. This guy gives up 50% of the strikes he faces hit him. And he's not exactly striking against gods here. Narimani, Minner, Trezano, Julian Arosa. Santos, on the other hand, this guy's had a long career. He's fought some pretty good names. He knocked out Kevin Lee. This guy hits pretty hard, and now we're seeing Grant Dawson go up to lightweight. He's been the bigger man, fighting at flyweight against, not even middling competition, lower-level UFC guys, in my opinion anyway. At featherweight, now he's going up lightweight, fighting a huge lightweight. Santos is a 6-footer, 75-inch reach, and he hits pretty hard for a guy known for his jiu-jitsu. So he's going to be landing some pretty big strikes, I think. And then here's the problem. Grant Dawson's going to want to take him down. He averages 4 every 15 minutes. If he takes this to the ground too much, he's going to be at risk of being submitted. Leonardo Santos is a 7-time world champion jiu-jitsu player. I don't think you want to be hanging around on the mat with that guy. And on the flip side, if you're not, you have to stand with him. And Santos is quite a bit bigger and hits a little bit harder. This is a tough one. I think there's some value on Santos. I went into this. This is the first fight I studied. I was so excited to get Grant Dawson against an old, deteriorating man. But no, total opposite feeling after I finished my film study. And, we have pretty good takedown defense on Santos as well. Long career, 88%. That's pretty reasonable. And like I said, if it gets there, I don't know that Dawson wants to be there. So how do you see this fight going? I'd say Grant Dawson's my pick to win it, but I think this line should be more like -130.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. When I first got into taping this fight, I'm like, ooh, there might be some value on Santos here, given the style that Dawson fights at, which is, wrestling and trying to grind his opponents out. And do you really want to do that against a 7-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu national champion? Like, maybe not. That's probably not the way that you want to approach this fight. Whenever we have instances like this where we have a heavy wrestler with solid grappling going up against a very high-level Jiu-Jitsu player, it reminds me of the Ben Askren and Damian Maia fight, where the guy needs his strength to win the fight, but his strength plays right into the strength of his opponent. And that's what we might have here with Santos and Dawson. However, I think the age difference, the speed difference, and the strength is going to be a little bit too much for Leonardo Santos to overcome. I think that Dawson will be comfortable enough on the feet here to kind of just pick at the lead leg of Santos at first, like with that calf kick. I think that's going to be very important for him in this fight. And when you got a guy like James Krause devising your game plans, you know that that's kind of the approach that they should be taking in a fight like this. Maybe like another fight that comes to mind when you're talking about a great wrestler going up against a very good jiu-jitsu player is Islam Makhachev versus Davy Hamosh, where we saw Makhachev go out there and strike for 2 rounds, and then in the 3rd round feel comfortable enough to get into the guard of Hamosh, knowing that he's kind of gassed him and deteriorated him, and he should be able to survive in that space. I think that's the approach we'll see here from Dawson. Kind of play on the feet long enough. Hopefully stay away from those bombs that Santos has apparently in his hands, putting away guys like Stevie Ray and Kevin Lee, like you were touching upon. But I think we see him stay away. I think we see better cardio from Dawson as well, especially coming up in weight. I feel like his cardio has been a little bit to his detriment in the past. But, the kid's talented. I think he has a ton of skills in his back pocket. Very strong wrestler, very fast. I think Santos is going to struggle once this fight reaches that 1.5 round mark. I think we're going to see his pace and his strength really start to go down. I do want to bring up the statistics from the last fight, though, against Roman Bogotov, where we saw Leonardo Santos shuck off 10 takedowns. Bogotov went 1 of 11 on takedowns in that fight. So, the takedown defense of Santos is definitely still there. Even later in fights, right? Like even when he was gassed out in that fight against Bogotov, he was still shucking off some takedowns. But I think that we'll see Dawson, with the better gas tank here and be able to take advantage of those situations. But am I willing to lay minus 190 on Dawson here? Nah, I'm just passing on this fight. If anything, there could be some value on Santos here, but it's hard to go out there and bet on a guy like him at this point in time. And it's so weird that he's undefeated in the UFC. He's coming off the Ultimate Fighter Brazil 2 back in 2013, where he lost on the show to Santiago Ponzinibbio. But since then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins. But this is dating all the way back to 2013. So he's been in the UFC for 8 years and had 7 straight wins over solid competition, but he just doesn't stay active enough. That's the issue here. So if he wants to get things going, he's going to have a very emphatic victory this weekend over Grant Dawson. But I just don't see it happening. So I'm leaning Dawson here. I think he takes it by decision. But the line, I think, is a little bit too out of whack. I just don't feel compelled enough to take the dog shot here on Leonardo Santos.
All right. I think, there's a little bit of value sitting there, but we don't have to bet it necessarily. You definitely might get a better live line on either of these guys. Santos cardio, probably not the greatest. Dawson's, I do expect to be a little bit better here, just like you said, going up in weight. So, we'll have to see how this one plays out. We'll probably get a real good feel for how it's going to go by the end of that first round. Let's wrap this show up with one I know you like, with Julia Villa. And I don't even want to try to pronounce her opponent's name, so I'll let you do that and take us through it.
Yeah, Julia Villa and Yulia Stoliarenko. She was actually a former contestant on The Ultimate Fighter, and she did end up losing there. She did get a shot on the finale, and she lost that fight. But since then, she put together 5 straight wins, 4 of them via armbar, and then the one fight that she had won via decision in Invicta. Absolutely the bloodiest fight that we saw that year. If you have the chance, please go back and watch that fight. She rips open a nasty cut on Versosa's face, and it just leaks. Like the whole cage is just like a pool of blood almost. It was so disgusting to see, but also so awesome to see at the same time. But I really like what we see from Stoliarenko, right? She's very offensive. She's very chaotic. She almost reminds me of Brandon Royval to a certain extent, where they may not have the greatest wrestling to get the fight to the ground, to get the jiu-jitsu game going, but they don't mind pulling guard. They don't mind creating these chaotic situations to take advantage of, to get their opponents thinking, okay, I really don't know what the hell is coming next at me, and Stoliarenko really provides that. Avila, on the other hand, she has some solid power in her hands, right? She's very intimidating with her strikes. She moves forward. She goes into like raging panda mode, where she's able to go out there and kind of take her opponents out by just moving forward and just overwhelming them. And I feel like if you put both of these girls in the cage like we are this weekend, we're going to get a violence bet that potentially hits here. So I took the under 2.5 at plus 150, as I think there's a solid amount of value there. Avila is normally a finisher. She kind of fell flat on her face last time around against Sajara Eubanks, and that was probably the worst performance of her career. But I think that we still see go out there and kind of reclaim the status that she had before that fight, where everybody was like, okay, she's worth being a minus 300 favorite, minus 350 or minus 400 favorite. But I'm not betting her at this line. I would rather take the under 2.5 or even take Avila inside the distance. I was looking at potentially taking Stoliarenko here, even by sub at plus 500, but I feel much better taking the under 2.5 and covering both winning conditions here on Avila's side and the Stoliarenko side. So I'm expecting violence in this fight. I think you're getting some good value on the under here, and that's kind of the approach that I'm taking with this fight. I'm really excited for it. I love both girls. They're all action all the time, and that's why I'm expecting the Violence bet to hit here, and especially if you give me dog money at plus 150, yeah, your boy's going to be all over that. So I can't wait to hit that one, and I can't wait to see how this fight turns out. But please don't parlay Avila. She could absolutely shit in your pie, just like Tai Tuivasa later on this card. But yeah, I do like Avila. I think she gets the finish via KO, but the under 2.5 is definitely my approach for this fight.
Lots of favorites looking a little bit sketchy. Lots of parlay busters here. We just don't know which ones are going to hit. But yeah, tons of scary minus 200 to 300s on this card. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for tuning in. Oh, no, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to, like you're saying, the minus 200s and minus 300 favorites have really not been doing that well. I put my statistics together after last week, and I believe they're 27 and 21, and favorites between minus 180 and minus 350. They're 27 and 21 this year. So yeah, they're only hitting at about a 58, 59% hit rate. So yeah, please be careful of these landmines, of these favorites that seem like, okay, just because they're minus 200 favorites, let me just throw them in a parlay. Jonathan Martinez reminded us last week why that's not a good thing to do. So be very careful which parlays this year, because the dogs are barking and there are a ton of upsets happening. Just ask Dustin Poirier as well.
And speaking of minus 200 favorites not hitting at a good clip, both of our favorite plays is Gregor Gillespie. So make sure you get some of that before he's pushed out to minus 300. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for joining me. That's Lion Sniper Fight Night, and we're out.